We will take you now to Canberra for that press conference by Rob Oakeshott and Tony Windsor.
But I'm easy all the way.
We right to go? Well, ladies and gentlemen, firstly, thank you for being here, and I do particularly appreciate some children from my electorate that are up the back from a number of schools, Dungowan, Somerton, Nundle, Moombi and Atunga. Welcome, kids. This probably will be a fairly historic day. Well, I guess what you've really been wanting to know is who will form the government. Before making a statement as to how I will vote, I'd just like to thank both leaders for the way in which they've treated us as individuals through this process. And I'd also like to thank the press, if I could. Even though you've been in our faces a bit, you have been very courteous, and you've given us a degree of freedom that we've needed in relation to the decision-making process. One of the things that we've looked to throughout this process is, could a government be formed? There's obviously three options. One, the coalition, two, the Labor Party, and the third option being another election. We've also looked at the issues of stability. If a government is formed, how long could it last? And that's a key deliberation in our view, and Rob might elaborate on that a bit later. How long could a government actually last with the numbers the way they are? Also, what sort of a relationship would there be in relation to the Senate, for instance? There are a number of other issues, and both sides of the debate have put regional packages together, and I don't think that's any secret. And they've both done a great job. They really have. There's differences, but they have recognised quite clearly that regional Australia has missed out in the past. So there's been some admissions in relation to that, and some of the programs that both sides have put together have been about trying to restore some of the equity issues in relation to health and education and infrastructure. And we thank both sides for doing that. I intend, with my vote, for what it's worth, to support the Labor Party. Rob will make an announcement in the moment as to how he intends to vote. The issues that I thought were critical to this, and possibly the most critical, was broadband. There's an enormous opportunity for regional Australians to engage with the infrastructure of this century, and to pass up that opportunity and miss the opportunity for millions of country Australians, I thought was too good an opportunity to miss. My advisers in relation to the broadband technology, and there are a number of them, suggest that you do it once, you do it right, and you do it with fibre. And that has been one of the major influences that I've had in terms of making a decision. There are many other issues, and it'll be up to others to release the information. But one of the key issues in my mind that many country Australians might take odds with me on this is the renewable energy climate change debate. I think it is time that, given the politics that surrounded the last Parliament, the Rudd, Turnbull, Abbott politics, it is time that we actually stood back and revisited some of those issues, not only in terms of a market mechanism or whether a carbon tax is the way to go, but really have a look at what the globe is doing. Really have a look at some of these issues and try and revisit some of those issues. And it is obvious to me that regional Australia would be a major beneficiary of a lot of the renewable energy sources. So I see enormous opportunities where others fear the whole climate change debate. There are enormous opportunities in that debate in relation to country Australians and regional Australians and the farm community, etc. The final thing that I'd say, and we'll probably be asked one or two questions, I gather, before handing over to Rob, and you'll all go and look at my maiden speech after this, because, and I hadn't looked at it for quite some time, but it was not really worth reading, but there's a... but I'll go to part of it that I think was, because I think it's very pertinent to today's decision. Obviously, many people would have thought the electorate of New England, given its history, the member would possibly vote with the coalition. When I first came into this place and when I was in the state parliament, one of the fascinating things about the political process was how country people never took advantage of their vote. Their vote was always sidelined. And in a sense, the National Party, or originally the Country Party, was seen as the representative of country people. What has happened through the amalgamation or the coalition of the Nationals and the Liberal Party is that the country vote, and the same applies to Country Labor and the Labor Party, the country vote has been subsumed into the two major parties, which are dominated by city-based majorities. And the elections have been fought on the western suburbs of our major cities. So the country issues haven't really come to the fore in relation to the policy debate, because they've been assumed by one side and taken for granted by the other. And the fact that there are country independents in this building indicates that country people have had enough of that. The other issue that relates particularly to today's debate is the fact that 30% that's been taken for granted isn't a majority and never will be. But it is a very, very large minority vote. And what it needs to do, particularly since over the last 15 years, where the two major parties are actually virtually the same in terms of policy, a few minor changes on the side, and we saw that at the election, where Tony Abbott went to the polls with the union movement's industrial relations legislation, and Julia Gillard went to the polls with the Liberal Party's boat people policy. So we've seen this merging of philosophies in a sense, and in that there's an enormous opportunity for country people through their representatives to deal with either side of the parliament and actually take political advantage of that moment. And that's exactly what we're doing here. Exactly what we're doing here is actually taking advantage of that moment and sending a signal to country people that if you want to be taken for granted in the future, go back to the old ways, because that's exactly what will happen to you. The admission by both parties, through the various documents that they've put together, the admission is that they have neglected country Australians. Yeah. And they are attempting through this process, because of the way the numbers have crunched, to try and rectify that particular situation. So I make this plea to country people, some of whom would think, who don't agree with the Labor Party. This isn't about philosophy. Philosophy, in terms of both these parties, died about a decade ago, or probably longer. This is about using the political system to advantage the people we represent and those people in regional Australia. So I just repeat again, and I do conclude, my vote will be going to the Gillard government. It will only support, well, I won't support no confidence motions, trivial no confidence motions. I will support supply, and I will reserve the right to represent my constituency on any vote in the Parliament, and also reserve the right to move a no confidence motion in the government as I see fit. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tony. One of my favourite movies when I was a kid was the Highlander movie, and the famous line, "And then there was one." Sort of know what he meant. Thank you to everyone for giving us the grace of, what are we up to, 17 days of trying to work out a wicked dilemma for Australia. And like Tony, I would also like to very much thank the good faith and good nature of the negotiations that have taken place between Julia Gillard, Tony Abbott and Tony Windsor, myself and Bob Katter. They would both be good Prime Ministers. There is no question about that. And if anything, that has made this decision all the more difficult for me, and I think on behalf of both of us and for Bob as well, a more difficult decision. They both, in this Parliament, where it will be a different Parliament, will contribute fantastic things for this country, and I hope whichever way this ends up going, that they renew their friendship, they talk and they do work together as much as possible in the national interest. It does matter. Also, can I say some thanks for some other people who've been involved. Bob Brown, Nick Xenophon and various senators have been involved. New colleagues in the lower house, Andrew Wilkie, Adam Bant and Tony Crook. This will be a different Parliament. They all have contributed in various ways, and even some long-term members and senators. I'd even thank Bill Heffernan today. He is a good man fundamentally, and and
I'm not supporting that.
And again, that's what makes the journey of the last 17 days tricky, and the decision we've had to make difficult. I wanted to start by saying what this decision is not. I want to be very clear and upfront that this is not a mandate for any government. We should have a great big swear jar